And I think what I've been coming to the conclusion about this morning is that what I prepared to say, I'm actually not prepared to say, so mostly I think I'm going to offer what I offer without comment, even though I'm going to comment quite a bit. But by that I mean, when Megan was like, "Would you want to talk about what you fear?" I think that was like the general subject. The reason I said yes is a few months ago, I had just read this book by James Baldwin called Tell Me How Long the Train's Been Gone. And there was a passage in the book that I guess I'm actually pretty grateful that it's very hard for me to present, to read. It's also kind of confusing, like why this is so difficult for me. And I think that the reason why I don't want to comment is because I think at this point, the truth about this passage is that I think on a very basic level, I don't understand it. And at the same time, when I read it, it was an epiphany, and like, I know this is true. Like, I just knew it was true. And I think I understand it on an intellectual level. I know what I like about it. I wrote all kinds of stuff about what I like about it, but I don't understand it. I can't understand it, and I don't want to understand it. And so, just a quick background about this book, which I read a few months ago, so I couldn't do a book report on it even right now. But it's basically this guy, Leo Proudhammer, who's a famous actor. He becomes a famous actor, I think on Broadway, maybe theater actor, but he has a heart attack. And so much of the book is him reflecting on his life and how he became like the person he became and the actor he became. And the part that I'm going to read is after he's been arrested as a kind of a college-age student, like a 20-year-old. He was arrested because he was leaving a white woman's house. The white woman was his friend. He's a black man, and that's why he was arrested. I mean, that her neighbors were afraid of what was going on, and so I'll read the passage, and I think then I'll stop talking. So all I'll say is that the imperative, I think there's the last sentence, what I'm going to read, I think I just took as like a command and the truth, and I was like, yes, this is true, and I don't know how to do this. So this is him in the jail cell. It said, I was not booked. I was not fingerprinted. I was taken into another room and left alone there for a while to meditate, I suppose, on my sins, or else count over my blues. I knew that this probably meant they were not yet certain to what extent they would be allowed to vent themselves on me. I took this as a good sign, though I always knew that this might merely mean that I was being saved for their more accomplished sadists. I knew that it was best not to think, not to undermine myself with visions of what was before me. For the moment, there was nothing I could do. There was no way to tell what would happen, who would enter, when the door opened again. And not altogether consciously, I began to evolve a trick which was to help me later in the theater. Leo, I said, you can't know what's going to happen. And until it happens, you can't know what to do. You're going to be surprised, so be surprised. That is the only way you'll be ready.
going to go out of order here, I guess, but we'll follow the bulletin. So first of all, I guess I didn't really actually know I wasn't sure if this was Epiphany Sunday, because I thought maybe Epiphany was the 5th and 6th, but that's okay, because actually I think the thoughts that I had to really connect with realization, epiphany, and they kind of think of it in two ways. There's kind of things shifting outside of ourselves that cause us to realize, bring us to epiphany or realization, and things shifting inside our thoughts, ourselves, that also can kind of bring us to a moment of realization. So one thing that I think maybe I don't know if I tried too hard to connect, but something that had really been a comment I had been thinking about that really seemed to connect with self-realization, epiphany, fear, those kinds of things was from Joseph Goldstein. He's kind of if you listen to, I don't know, mindfulness kind of things, you might be familiar with him, but the thing he said was that often when self-realization comes, it's bad news. And I think to me that kind of means like you kind of realize you were doing something that wasn't really benefiting you, so when you realize that, it's kind of like, oh crap. So I had been thinking about that, and also came to realize that I really identify with that, and like, yeah, that seems to like be constantly happening. But also that there is some good news in that. So I guess I'm going to just share like a few. I'm going to try to not go too deep into things, because it's just a few stories that kind of cover a lot of time, I guess. So kind of give like a sort of quick overview of a few moments of I don't know, clarity, or just times when I think like things have really been shifting. Kind of see where I am. Okay, so yeah, I guess so. One time, I think, just again, without going into deeply into my family of origin, I know, looking back to kind of growing up with my nuclear family, it was a time where there was lots of love, lots of connection, and it was also a time with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of deep feelings of being disconnected, isolated. Typical things that can go with being a kid, teenager, dealing with divorce, alcoholism in the family, things like that. So it kind of brings me to a time when I was leaving that family. Around that time when I was going to college, I felt this deep sense of, what I would call then like this sense that I was disconnected, kind of removed from the world, and didn't know how I was going to re-enter. Didn't know, just didn't know what I didn't know. What I would say was, but I guess I see that kind of fear, anxiety of things happening as a positive of, okay, here's something pointing you somewhere, like you need to move. Like, I think often that's what fear is, like that self-realization. Fear is kind of a signpost saying something's happening, pay attention. So at that time, again, I don't think I knew where to move, but I think I found in my life, my strategy sometimes is, if you don't know what to do something. And I don't know if that's good advice. I don't think I'd give that as advice, because I don't know if that's good advice. Some people might say the opposite, sit and pay attention. But I think sometimes that's kind of how I operate, is when you don't know what to do something. So when I went to college, I did things I hadn't done. I ran cross country. I think I was the most consistent of making it to 5:30 a.m. workouts, just because it was partly fear-driven. I think it was just that anxiety and fear-driven. So again, is that good? I don't know, but I think it served me in a moment. So then I would fast forward several years. some of you may remember a few years back, I had kind of shared with the church that I was in a moment of kind of deep, confusing anxiety and really just not knowing where it was coming from. So, with fear, sometimes it's something very direct that you see and you know what it is and you know you need to move to be safe. But so many times it comes and it's like, I don't know what that thing is. At the time, so I was riding with Michelle's parents back from Boulder, Colorado. We had a great vacation. We usually meet with her brother and their family live in California, so we usually meet in California or sometimes halfway in between. And as we were coming back, I just noticed this feeling of anxiety, fear just creeping in. No idea, it's kind of like we had just had a great time, no idea where, maybe it's because, you're kind of coming off this great time and coming down or whatever, but other things that were happening at the time is I was working mostly by myself, building a barn outbuilding by our house. So I was alone a lot and working in isolation. And I think from that, one thing that it kind of later came to me that some of the things that were happening in our life where we had realized that, our family would be the three of us, that we had wanted to have more children, but, these things were happening and kind of just this shift. So that there was this shift happening and just kind of coming to that realization. Again, that's something outside, but kind of bad news. I don't know. So, at that time, I think I realized that I was, spending a lot of time kind of toiling and working alone and I need to reconnect. And I was fortunate to have some friends and ways to do that. So just to kind of finish up so Aaron can talk here, I think where I find myself right now is a place where things have shifted in a major way, kind of quickly, dramatically. In fact, I think just this process of death with Michelle over the past few years, it's, if people have experienced that, the way I experience it is a constant shifting. And so quick, you can't keep up. That your mind, I know Michelle felt this way too, just the way she was experiencing things, her mind could not keep up with what her reality was of what she should be hoping for. And, I know I felt that way too, that things happen, things are moving and just shifting so quickly that you kind of realize, oh, I need to be doing this. Oh, this is what I need to be doing now. It's just a constant change. Let me just look real quick what I was going to say more about that. But, I guess so. It's things are shifting. There's this fear that things have changed and you don't know what to do, and that's kind of the space I find myself in now. And there's part of me that says, I don't know what to do. I need to do something, because that's, I think, how I operate. But I think also, coming many years off of some of those other experiences, I'm also in a very different place where it's amazing the way I've experienced connection. In a way I've never really experienced it before, where those moments draw you in. It's sort of a signpost to draw you into what matters, to pay attention to what's happening. So I guess I find that's essentially where I find myself now, is kind of, what do I need to pay attention to? Do I need to do something to move on, or need to do something? So I think, I guess the good news, saying that self-realization or realization is always bad news. I think the good news that I wanted to say is that I guess connecting to Ian just a little bit, things, you don't know what's going to happen. The world is constantly shifting. It is constantly shifting faster than you can keep up with. But you don't have to be constantly moving with all those shifts. But what I said here, the world is moving, that we are bumping into a limit or that we have become disconnected. Sometimes fear is a sign that we have become disconnected, that we don't have to move away from it, but we're already, I think usually when we have that realization, we're already moving toward connection and maybe toward reality. So I think that's the good news for me. Usually when you're having that realization, it's because you're already kind of, you can see it because you're already kind of moving outside of it. So.
I feel like when I was preparing this, the fear that I chose to focus on felt trivial in light of the world, the fear in the world today, and nevertheless, you're going to hear about it. So. What I wrote, I titled "No Room for Fear in a Hug from Grandma." And as Anthony said at the beginning, the Magi kind of modeled what it looked like to be led by hope, moving through fear without letting it paralyze us. There is much fear in the story. Depending on which translation you read, Herod is alarmed, terrified, disturbed, or troubled, and Jerusalem with him. And the Magi, the fear of the unknown could have kept them from following the star. It would surely have been safer and easier for them to avoid traveling to a foreign country. And once they arrived, would they find what they were seeking? What do they do with fear? Do they freeze? Do they flee? The Reverend Dr. Boyung Lee suggests they travel through uncertainty, seeking truth. As an artist, nothing can produce a healthy fear in me as much as a blank canvas or a fresh piece of blank paper. I've had my idea, maybe a little epiphany, and now it's time to begin the journey and put it on paper. But facing this expanse, I freeze as the fears creep in. I'm not talented enough to pull this off. I will be exposed as a fraud. People will find out that I'm not a real artist because real artists know what they're doing. And this large piece of paper is quite expensive, so if I create anything but a masterpiece, I'm just wasting money. So I'm disturbed, I'm troubled, and many times, how do I respond to these fears? I flee. Cleaning up my studio is suddenly highly desirable and necessary before I can be in the right mind to begin the drawing. And of course, cleaning leads to sorting, and if I'm lucky, it's time to stop work for the day, and my journey hasn't even started. As a child, making art was easier, especially at Grandma's house. Grandma had a drawer in the kitchen dedicated to scrap paper. After arriving for a visit, pulling open that drawer was the second thing I did. The first thing was to get a hug from Grandma. Little did I realize back then how important was that immediate gesture of acceptance. Her hug was a blessing to be me, to do what I do. Then I crouched my little self down. It was the bottom drawer, so I could just help myself, and fished around to find a really good piece of scrap paper, which meant it was completely blank on one side. Seated at the table, I would immediately begin drawing whatever my little brain had been cooking up at the time. No hesitation, no fear. If I messed up, it didn't matter. And no matter what I drew, Grandma would lay on the praise. There was nothing I could do to disappoint her. Her hug was a blessing. In her arms, there was no room for fear. Back to the present, when I stare down that blank sheet of paper, I need to remember Grandma's hug. Her blessing to begin my journey, and then move forward as the Magi did, refusing to let fear be the end of my story.